Man, what a pleasure to welcome on a tight end legend. Really, we should have fit you into blood and guts, Trey. I'm sorry I didn't give you a call when I was working on that a couple years ago because right here is the man central to, I'd say, one of the most iconic plays in Super Bowl history, but it probably is number one, the Philly special in Minneapolis. And he is so much more than that. So I figured, with the Philadelphia Eagles winning another Super Bowl, got to shoot Trey a text and hop on the go along pod to talk Eagles, talk football. Your life is amazing. I mean, how you're able to kind of fight your way from UDFA to becoming a legend. But how is life today, Trey? Where are you? Three kids. I imagine your hands are full post NFL.
Yeah, man, all's good. No complaints. We're living down in Tampa, Florida. Yeah, like you said, I got three kids that are rocking and rolling in the sports world. So it's been fun to be a dad and to be around and help out with that, as much as I can. But all is well down here. Can't complain.
That's awesome. So are they into football? Got the
Yeah, my
pads
son,
on,
my
flag.
son last year played his second year of tackle football. We'll do his third year again this year. We're in a tough league. It's kind of crazy, but all kids sports are actually kind of crazy. Just like the politics and stuff that go into it. But yeah, we're figuring it out and we're getting our groove and we'll be good to go.
That's awesome. How is it like transitioning? I mean, you played 7 years. What was it? Was it smooth for you to kind of dive back into, getting your kids into sports, finding a purpose outside of the NFL? I don't know, like how I haven't really talked to you about that.
Yeah, the transition for me was smooth because I never really wanted to be a lifer. I wasn't like I didn't want to play in the league until the wheels fell off. I kind of wanted to get in and get out. And so I enjoyed my 7 years. Honestly, it was probably cut short just due to COVID and not wanting to get the vaccine and just all the loopholes that went on during that time that a lot of people don't really know about in the sense of being a free agent and COVID tests every morning and all the crap that has to you have to do and deal with with that. So without getting too deep into the woods, kind of cut short just by a year or two. And then it was honestly it was all I've ever wanted to do. Specifically as a dad, like was to be there. I didn't have a dad growing up, so I wanted to be there for my kids. Wanted to be as involved and hands on as I possibly could. Um, but I'm a very hands-on dad, but I'm a very like, hey, you guys do what you want to do in the sense of like, sports and being on what team and all that type of stuff. Like we're competitive, but it's funny because back when I was growing up, I always wanted to be on the best team, like baseball, best baseball team, best football team. But it seems like nowadays the kids are really more interested in playing with their friends, which is cool.
Huh.
And so that's kind of what we're dealing with right now. And my oldest is a pretty good volleyball player. And so we're traveling all over the place right now, almost every other weekend to play volleyball at a pretty high level. But volleyball's fun, dude. Like, that's like
Yeah.
one of my favorite sports to watch. Like there's so much action. It's nonstop and you're playing, 3 or 4 games a day. And it's kind of like to take like the AAU basketball, for men. And that's what volleyball is for the women. And so having a lot of fun. We're in Orlando this weekend coming up at a national qualifier. So just kind of all over the place.
That's fantastic. Man, love it. I forgot about that. That would have been when you left the NFL because there were GMs that basically said, we'll be more apt to keep a vaccinated player than an unvaccinated player. It is kind of insane when you look
That's what
back at.
that's what they all said, man. They all said they wanted a vaccinated guy because, and to a degree, it made sense because if you had a guy who wasn't a starter, and or if you're so it's either one way. If your starter's vaccinated, if anybody in the tight end room got COVID, he would still be able to play because he was vaccinated, right? But if your starter wasn't vaccinated, you had to have a vaccinated backup because if the starter got COVID, then the backup would be able to play because he was vaccinated. So just the whole politics and how all that went about was just wild, and it was wild for everybody. It wasn't just for me. It was wild. I mean, every morning having to take the test if you weren't vaccinated, and just a lot of loopholes you had to go through.
Right. Exactly what everybody wants to listen to. Let's relive 2020,
I
right?
know, right?
This shitty year in just about every conceivable way.
Hmm.
Okay, but let's before we get into Philly special and your career, everything. I mean, the Eagles of today. I imagine you watched the Super Bowl. You threw yourself into this crew. Man, what popped with this group? Do you see any similarities between the 2024 team, your 2017 squad that won it all?
Yeah, I think. I mean, honestly, every year you see a lot of similarities between a lot of the champions, just because of how many things had to go right to get to that point. you don't just, just because you have the best roster doesn't mean you're going to make it to the Super Bowl every single year. So, I think this Eagles team was different and unique. I think their defensive line was out of this world. And I think you kind of tell that's really how you win championships. Our defensive line was really good back when we won. This defensive line was, out of this world. And then you also see like a quarterback being extremely accurate definitely helps you win a Super Bowl. And then being able to have, a threatening running game, and then making your field goals. Jake Elliott was there for both of the Super Bowls.
Yeah.
Making special teams plays a huge factor into it as well. But this team was just unbelievable on the defensive line and their pressure on Mahomes. I mean, anybody that had one-on-one pass protection, the D line beat them. For the most part, it seemed like Mahomes was running for his life and was kind of like uneasy back there for maybe the first time in his career. But it was just fun to watch these guys make plays, and just it wasn't fun to be a Kansas City fan, I can tell you that. And it wasn't fun to be like a casual NFL fan because Kansas City was getting beat up, pretty good.
Yeah, I get that, but I think if you are a casual fan, like an objective football
Hmm.
consumer, I mean, you've got to love it because as much as I love to bitch about the NFL getting soft and football becoming something else, and it's blocking, it's tackling, it's beating the snot out of the guy across the line of scrimmage. That's
Yeah,
all Philly did, right? Like you
yeah,
just said, one on one, don't need to blitz. Jalen Carter is going to kill that player in front of him. Milton Williams, same thing. Josh Sweat, and it kind of brings the game back to its roots in a way. I feel like that was my takeaway from this game. Like football is preserved. No matter how many infomercials and how much we're spammed about it being safe, it's not
yeah,
safe, and that's okay.
yeah.
And the Eagles just told the world this is how you win.
No, it's extremely violent, and I mean, obviously, D line is a huge factor in that win. Just the pressure they got on Mahomes was spectacular.
Did you like that aspect of the sport yourself? I mean, you did it all. Back to Florida. I mean, you ran it over 153 times. You caught 107 passes. You scored 6 touchdowns in a game. I mean, you were a football player that could not be put in a box yourself.
Yeah, no, I mean, what is your specific question about that? Like, what are you asking me?
I guess did you just love that like the football itself is preserved in a game like this, right? Like just everything that we love about it. And we always hear guys say, "I'm just a football player." But what does
Yeah.
that even mean? That seems to be you. I mean, you were just a football player. Nobody really knew what to do with you out of college. Is he a running back? Is he a receiver? I mean, you were recruited as a quarterback. Did you just kind of look at yourself when you look back at your own career as hell? I was just a football player. I just love the sport itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think that means the guys that say that they just want to play. They want to be on the field. I remember like my freshman year in college, I was in like you mentioned, I was recruited as a quarterback. I was in the quarterback room, and the second week of training camp, we're Urban like to keep us super late, so we were probably there watching film at like 10:30 at night. And I remember him like busting through the quarterback room door, and he goes, "Sorry, someone's at my front door." And he goes, "You're too athletic to sit on the bench," because I was going to be behind the guy that was a starter. "You're too athletic to sit on the bench," and I was like, all right, what does that even mean? And he said, "I need you to go play a different position on offense. You need to play tight end or wide receiver. We don't know yet." And I said, "Well, I don't want to sit on the bench. I can tell you that right now. Like, I didn't come here to be a bench warmer." And so from the next morning on, I was in the tight end room the next day. The day after that, I was in the running back room. The day after that, I was in the wide receiver room. At the end of the day, I just wanted to figure out, how I could play. Same with the NFL. I get to the NFL, I'm supposed to be, quote unquote, a tight end, but no one really knows. I got a tight end slash running back number, so I could play both positions just in case, I don't pan out one way or the other. And then the best thing that ever happened to me was walking into Dave Phipps' office, the special teams coordinator, and he said, "Look at this depth chart." And I'm looking at it, and he says, "Do you think you'll ever play offense this year?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to play offense." You know what I mean? Like, I can do this, I can do that. And he says, "I'll bet my whole salary right now that you won't play one snap on offense. And the only way you'll make it in the league is to play special teams." And so what did my mindset do? I shift from playing, "Oh, I'm going to play offense," to like, how the heck do I get on every special teams and make sure I have a, one of 53 spot on the team. And didn't really care what team it was. I just wanted to make one team, so I guess that's kind of what, wanting to play or being a football player is.
What year was that with Dave Fipp?
My first year was 14, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2014. Yeah, and I'll never forget it. Like I was walking in through all the hallways, like to meet all the coaches because I was undrafted, you know what I mean, and everything like that. And shaking everybody's hand. Oh, we're excited to have you. Da da da. Love watching you at Florida. And almost everybody's saying the same thing, for the most part. And then I go to see Dave Fit, and he's like, "Come here, come sit down." And I sit down. He closes the door, and he had because the special teams. This is typical for every room. They have the whole depth chart because they need to know who's the starter because they're not going to use the starter for the most part on all the special teams and who's second and third string. And so I was the sixth guy. I remember I said Burton 47, sixth guy on the depth chart. And yeah, he went through the whole spiel. And that, but I respect that so much, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
without him saying that, I probably would have. And it wasn't that I wasn't paying attention to the offense or I wasn't trying to study the offense, but I still had to know, those types of things. But I probably would not have taken special teams as serious if he would not have told me, or would not have sat me down and told me and kept it real with me.
I mean, you can really go one of two directions there. You
For
can
sure.
say, Screw you. No, I'm going to play offense. I'm going to find a role. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm talented." Or you kind of look inward and, "No, I'm going to survive somehow in this cutthroat business." He's just kind of telling you right then,
I
it's a
appreciated
cutthroat
it.
world, man.
No, I respected it. But that's the problem. Like you get guys that come in and they say that no, I'm playing offense or no, I'm going to do this, and then you never see them again, right? Then they don't make a team, they don't make the next team, they get cut, and then next thing you know, they're out of the league. But I felt like truly, if I could figure out a way to just make a team, if I can make a team, then I have a chance to
Yeah.
refine my skills on offense, and then eventually, hopefully down the road, I won't just be a special teams player. I'll be able to play offense, but regardless of all that, if I don't make a team, then I have no chance, of doing any of those things down the road.
Which in a way, I mean, you kind of went through that in your mind. Are you thinking I'm going to be the next Tebow at Florida? I'm going to be a quarterback. I'm going to be a Heisman winner. I'm going to win championships, throwing and running and leading the team. And things kind of changed there. I mean, you were only with Urban, I want to say a
One
year.
year, yeah.
Yeah. So things kind of changed in a hurry, like your position, the coach, maybe not winning as much as you wanted to win. And your role became this hybrid, do it all kind of player.
Yeah, it was a weird. I mean, Florida was a really weird time for me because I did come in as a quarterback. I thought I was going to play quarterback. I didn't. I mean, I wasn't good enough to play at the next level. I didn't have like the arm strength or the talent that especially some of these guys have now. But back then, they did. No one was really as arm talented as like a Joe Burrow or any of these guys playing currently. And so there was one or two guys. But so I did think that I could play at Florida, but I knew I didn't want to sit the bench. And then, like you said, with the coaching change, I actually tried to go play defense when Muschamp came in to be the head coach. I remember like his first couple of days there, I was an offensive guy. I think I tied the record for touchdowns as a freshman at Florida, but I didn't. Charlie Weiss came in, and I didn't do well with him. I didn't like him at all. He's probably one of the only coaches I never really liked, and didn't really have a connection or relationship with. And so during spring training or spring camp, I went into Muschamp's office and said, "Hey, I would love to play safety." And I actually practiced like once or twice with the safeties. And then Charlie convinced me to come back and play offense, and the rest was history. But yeah, so I mean, I was just trying to get on the field. I didn't really know what my role was going to be, but I know I didn't want to sit, and I would do whatever I had to do to get on the field.
Is that when you seriously considered transferring? I mean, this is pre NIL, pre
Yeah,
portal, all that stuff. I mean, you thought about leaving Florida. It wasn't because of
yep,
Charlie Weiss.
yeah. It was because of him. If he would have came back my junior year, I would have been gone. But since they fired him after my sophomore year, going into my junior year, I stayed.
All right. So what made it just a brutal time with Charlie Weiss looking back?
A lot of things, his personality and my personality didn't mix very well, and so, I'm not here to bash anybody, but that's just the bottom line. That's the end of the day, and I'm glad he left, and I'm glad I stayed. I would have, looking back, I mean, I would have been miserable. I love everything about Florida. Like I bleed orange and blue. That's my by far head and shoulders above any other team. Obviously, I love the Eagles as well, but Florida. I just grew up being a Florida fan. You have that one team that you just grow up your whole entire life. You never miss a game. Da, da, da. So yeah, just the relationships and the connections that I've made through the University of Florida. I'm forever grateful. So I'm really glad I didn't have to leave.
It is wild when you think back at just the counterfactuals of it all. Like what happens to
Yeah.
your football career? I mean, maybe you kind of take a few winding roads and you end up at that 1.5 yard line in a Super Bowl some way somehow. But I don't know. It's
Yeah,
like
you never know.
you never know.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
but again, you stuck it out, and that's just not something you see too often today, especially. You kind of caught the tail end. It would have been like the previous 4 or 5 years with some of those wild Florida personalities. I mean, there. I think there's a documentary out on those Florida teams, but there should be another one that's a little more real and raw. If you like, you
I'm
probably
sure
heard
they'll
some
make one.
stories.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll make one eventually. But yeah, I mean, the first one was good just to get people interested and involved and
Yeah.
engaged. But hopefully they make another one.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm like, okay, this is okay. I feel like it's a little sanitized. We need something a little more raw here, guys.
100%. Yeah, I agree.
So okay, UDFA. How did you? So you listen to Dave Phipp, you find a role, you stick around. At what point did you realize, okay, I'm talented enough to play on offense, to have a role? Like, what was there a turning point down those lines at all?
Yeah, honestly, when I first got there, I felt like I could play, but on offense. But the problem was we had Selleck and Zach Ertz in front of me. So like being realistic, I'm like, well, I'm definitely not going to play in front of these guys. These guys are better than me. They've been here in the league longer. They have way more money invested in these guys. So I honestly, I owe a lot of my success to a guy named James Casey. He was the third tight end, and I was the fourth tight end on the a ton of credit to Selleck, Ertz, and James. Like anytime I asked for anything, they immediately were like, "Yeah, let's do that," or "This is what happens," and then they would explain it to me. But they would also like take me under their wing, and they would show me like their pre-practice and their post-practice stuff, like what they would do and what they're looking at and what they're seeing. And so like I was just a sponge. I spent all day long in the facility. James would get there super early. James was crazy. Like he would. I remember during training camp, he was like, I was like, bro, you gonna get a haircut? He says, no, bro, I gotta look crazy so that they keep me here. He said something like, so that they think I'm crazy and they keep me here and they can't cut me. And I'm like, all right. And I did the same thing. I didn't shave. I didn't cut my hair for like months, bro. Like I looked like a madman, you
That's
know.
awesome.
But like I just was following his footsteps. He was like, yeah, you gotta look crazy. When the GM walks down here, you gotta look at him in his eyes and like shake your head, like make him look like you're nuts, make it look like you're nuts, like you're something wrong with you. And so, I did the same thing. And so I just followed their footsteps and their guidance. And I had another guy on the special teams side of things. Chris Maragos was absolute, rock star for me. Him and his family, my wife and his wife, we had the same amount of kids. Like just an unbelievable man and father and football player. But he took me under his wing too. As soon as we walk off the practice field, there'd be like an hour gap between the end of practice and the first meetings. And like as soon as we would walk off, I would always see him like duck off to the left and go to the meeting room and watch practice, like before we would watch practice, with the coaches and stuff. And so I just follow him in the room. And the next thing you know, we got 3 or 4 guys in there watching film, already knowing what the special teams coordinator is going to say, in the special teams meeting. And then we would have like input, and I'd listen to Chris and see how we saw things and talked. And so I don't know, I just owe those guys, specifically a ton because it's easy when you have someone that's younger than you and potentially, going to take your position or you're going to fight with him for the job. You see it in the media a lot. You see these guys, older guys, especially like quarterbacks, they get a lot of the pub, of like, oh no, that's not my responsibility to, bring this guy up, or it's not my responsibility to teach him the game. But we didn't have many guys like that in Philly, honestly. And so I'm really thankful, for them to, basically open up how they do things and how to be a pro.
That's so cool. I mean, Howie Roseman has never been shy in saying he wants to take some chances on different personalities, different characters. Maybe he'll take a chance on a prospect other teams won't. So even if you are the most clean cut human being ever imaginable, never even had detention in middle school, maybe you want to look a little crazy to Howie Roseman walking the halls, right? Look a little
Yeah,
deranged. You're just listening
it
to System
sounds
of a Down, banging your head against
it's
the wall.
it sounds kind of stupid now, but yeah, James would be sitting in the damn meeting in the tight end meeting room at like 5:30 in the morning in the pitch black. Like, bro, there's no light at all. Like, there's no window. There's nothing except for like under the crack of the door. There's a little bit of light, and he'd be sitting in there, and he'd 5:30 in the morning taping his fingers, and no one would show up to the building until 8 o'clock, 8:30. Their first meeting wasn't until 9, and he'd be sitting in there. And if you had been to walk in there, I remember like 2 or 3 times I walk in there because I forgot my iPad or I forgot like my cup. And you walk in, oh shoot! Like, bro, what are you doing in the corner of the tight end room, just taping his fingers? But I mean, that was James, and I really just appreciate him, and he's doing really well now. He's the tight end coach in Kansas City. I mean, in Cincinnati, and he's been doing that for a couple of years.
Oh,
So,
that's right.
yeah, it's awesome for him.
That's great. And so, in that 2017 season, that's your fourth year in the pros, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And you're involved, even though there are like a lot of different tight ends, a lot of different receivers. You caught 23 balls, 5 touchdowns, and then you lose your quarterback. You lose Carson Wentz,
Mhm.
who's an MVP front runner at that time. It was one of those injuries. I can remember I was in LA, I think, covering a Chargers game. It was one of those injuries where you knew exactly where you were when you heard the
Yeah.
news because it was that much of a bummer. I mean, this guy's having the season of his life. This team is a Super Bowl favorite, let alone a contender. But I remember being around you guys and being down there during that first round bye, and everybody insisted, no, like we genuinely believe we can win a Super Bowl with Nick Foles. Like we're not just bowing out. Like this isn't like every other team that's lost their quarterback. The year before, Derek Carr went down for the Raiders. He was an
Yeah.
MVP front runner, and I mean they were one and done, like just about every team is when they lose their quarterback. What was the mood really like in that locker room? Because I guess it wasn't just a bunch of BS that you're feeding us in the media. Like you knew you had something special with or without this MVP quarterback.
Yeah, we were really talented. Our second and third string guys were really there's a lot of dudes that went out. Jason Peters, Hall of Famer, Darren
Oh yeah.
Sproles, Hall of Famer. Chris Maragos. He was a Pro Bowl runner up for 6, 7, 8 years in a row. So Jordan Hicks, our starting linebacker. I mean, there's a ton of guys that were injured, but our twos were really good. They were a lot of guys. Went off to get second contracts and that type of stuff. But yeah, we were extremely confident. It wasn't all like dandelions and roses, to start out with. Foles, um, I wouldn't say he struggled, but he didn't play as well as he did in the playoffs. His first couple games in the regular season, it took a little bit, but we were still winning. At the end of the day, and I think Foles was just so dialed in, and we knew what he could do. Especially we saw it every single day in practice and in training camp, and all that type of stuff. So he was. He just got really dialed in, man. And what he did in the playoffs was, I don't know, man. I don't know if we'll ever see anything like that again. He was just lights out, and how he was able to conduct the offense and the control that he had. But yeah, we were all extremely confident. Anytime you get a chance to get that number one seed and that bye, it's an absolute game changer for you.
So a young GA on the staff, Press Taylor, he's
Mm-hmm.
grinding the film and trying to find any play he can find, any game, any level, digs up this Philly special. I think you worked on it the bye week in the
Yeah,
playoffs. Is that right? When you first kind of implemented it and practiced it a little bit?
yeah. They gave us all a couple of days off, and while the players were off, the coaches had still some responsibilities and everything. And I think Doug brought everybody in on the offensive side of the ball, and said, "Hey, I want everybody to bring me a trick play that we can install, for this playoff run or whatever." And so, yeah, Press decided to run that. I forgot where he got it from. He might have got it from college, but yeah, we installed it during the bye week, and we ran it, 1 or 2 times every single week going into the game. But we obviously never ran it during a game until the Super Bowl.
Did it work every time in practice, or were there like some mishaps in practice?
The first couple of times there was a couple of mishaps, but I will say it was completed every time.
Oh, okay. So you
Yeah,
did complete it every time.
yeah. It
This is a,
wasn't the best throw every time, but it was completed every
yeah. So you had the quarterback experience in high school, so you know you can throw the ball.
time. Hmm.
At the same time, though, what's in the back of your mind? Are you wondering when is Doug gonna call this in a game? And maybe you think it's that Atlanta divisional game, but then you're blowing out the Vikings in the NFC Championship game. Did it ever become a real possibility those first two games before the Super Bowl?
I always thought I was very obviously very involved because I was every play we didn't know who was going to go in, so I was always standing by my tight end coach, throughout the whole my whole career, just seeing if I was going to go in or if Zach was going to go in or if we all were going to go in. And so I had times where I thought, we might have he was going to call it or he might have called it, especially in the Atlanta and the Minnesota game, but I had no recollection or thought about it being called in the
Hmm.
Super Bowl at all. Like and specifically, I remember Atlanta. I'm sitting there waiting, like, oh, this might be it, this might be it, or Minnesota, this might be it, this might be it, and it never came. And then for some reason, it caught me off guard, which is probably better for the better. But yeah, it caught me off guard in the Super Bowl and just rolled with it.
Right, it's got to be for the better because if you're just anxious, I mean that could feed some paranoia, which could
For
feed
sure.
restless nights, and you've got 2 weeks to kind of think about the Super Bowl. You're not thinking about it up to the game at all, like because in your mind it could be, man, the ball will be in my hands, everything could be on the line, am I gonna have sweaty palms in that situation?
Well, I remember I think I told my wife, and then my brother, my younger brother, he played ball as well, and so I might have told
Okay.
him and my uncle. Those were like three people I said like, hey, if you ever see me out here, something cool's gonna happen. But no, man. I mean, leading into the game, yeah, we talked about it and we walked through it and that type of stuff. But in the game, I was oblivious to it. I had no clue that we even had that play until they called it.
Now you kind of just skim past. Yeah, you did it through some walkthroughs. You practiced it. You're playing the Patriots too. I mean, Spygate. You had to have been a little worried. Do they
Well,
have
we never did
eyeballs
it.
on this thing?
Yeah, we never did it outside of Philly. So we practiced. Like, so you have the Super Bowl is a 2 week thing, right? So the first week you're at home practicing. Basically, you install all your stuff there, and then when you go to the site for the game, you practice, but it's more of like repetitive stuff that you might have done during the season. You know what I mean? And then when you do walkthroughs at night, and when you do the walkthroughs in the conference room, that's when you do all the specific stuff for the game, just specifically because we were playing the Patriots. But I think a lot of teams follow that model because you don't the practice is in a private place, and we practice at University of Minnesota's indoor facility, but it's really public because really a lot of people can be walking through
Yeah.
all of that. It's not really super secure, but the hotel is very secure, especially like the conference room that has all the important information. And so we never really ran it in practice that week. We walked through it once or twice in the conference room, and that was it.
Doug knew. You
Yeah,
can't take any chances with this play with Bill.
yeah, for sure.
In that hotel, I mean, we talked to you guys leading up to the game. I can remember chatting with you at some point, but like leading up to the Super Bowl, all the players that are all these tables. I gotta say, there weren't many people talking to you all week, right? You're
Mhm.
probably one of those players just sitting there. What am I doing, wasting my time at these media availabilities, right? I don't. No, nobody knew Trey Burton was going to become a prominent story in this game. Is my point.
Yeah, no, that's the cool part about it, man. Anybody can be the hero, or anybody can do something cool. You just need an opportunity.
38 seconds left in the first half. You're up 15-12 at the 1.5 yard line. We've all seen the clip, right? Doug and Nick. I think it's Nick, right? Philly. You want to
Yeah,
run this trick play?
yep.
You run out of the field. Does it all just happen so fast you don't have time to really get nervous? Or did it kind of slow down to a crawl where you catch the pitch from Corey Clement and everything just kind of slows? I take us through the play.
Yeah, I mean, we called a timeout, and like you said, Nick came to the sideline, and like I said, I was always standing by my tight end coach because I needed to know what personnel was going into the game, and so he called Cub. That was personnel. That was when Zach and I both went in at the same time, and so he's like Cub. He looked at me. He's like Cub, and so I ran on the field, and I get in the huddle, and it was weird because I felt like the play clock was like we needed an extra couple seconds because Nick had to motion like he slow motion. He
Right.
said, would motion to the front and went to the side and went lane, and then we would snap the ball. So we needed a little bit extra time, and I felt like we didn't have much time. Like the play clock was running down pretty fast, and yeah. So I like to think of it as like if I was holding your phone right now or my phone and I threw it at you, what would you do? You'd put your hands up to try to catch it,
Yeah.
right? Well, that's basically what happened with the play. Like I didn't have any time to really think about it. I wasn't like, oh, how am I going to catch this? With one hand or my fingers, my pinkies, and my thumb, or how am I going to catch it? No, I was just like catch the ball and throw it. I got the laces really good somehow, and Corey, great toss and got the laces, and Nick was wide open and threw it. There really wasn't much thought about it at all, honestly.
Because as easy as it might look, man, the stakes, the pressure, 100+ million people
Now, yeah,
watching.
now it
I mean,
sounds
not
great, right? But then you don't. I mean, I'm just trying to do the best I can. And like I said, someone threw me my cell phone, and I caught my cell phone,
yeah,
and I threw it. That was really
right.
it.
Because you got to
So
get your
that's
fingers
it.
on the laces. I mean, you're spinning the ball around. This is
Yeah,
against a team 3 years prior at the 1 yard line. Made a pretty big play against
yeah,
Seattle in the Super
hmm
Bowl. A lot of stuff can go wrong, but you're not thinking about what can go wrong. You're just out there playing.
yeah. Just doing my thing, man.
Were you on the field much offensively before that? Was that your first play?
No, no. I played.
You were out
I
there.
don't know the exact percentage, but I would say I probably 30 to 35% of the
Okay.
time I was out there.
Man. And so you go up 22-12, and the rest is history. You ended up needing those extra points against this team. How
Yeah.
did your life change with that one moment?
Yeah, you just get thrown in the national spotlight. I think it changed multiple ways just because I was going to be a free agent that year, regardless of the play or not. And so it was definitely a positive. from a getting your name out there and being like a big name to talk about. It's funny because like a lot of people always say like, oh, well, I made a lot of money off the Philly special. I mean, honestly, I was going to make a lot of money no matter what, because I was going to be a free agent and had a good couple years previously of that. But the Philly special definitely like pushed me up there above, probably what I would have made prior or previously. Um, and so, yeah, it put me on the spotlight, and I was, doing a lot of shows, and it's just anytime you win a Super Bowl, it's just wild, it's crazy, and it was weird because I didn't really get to fully experience, post Super Bowl because I was gone, I didn't my house wasn't there in New Jersey anymore. Our lease was up. We were back in Florida immediately, just trying to figure out, what was next. And, playing in the Super Bowl and then free agency and the combine happening, it happened so fast, man. Like you don't really have much time. It's such a quick turnaround. And then I ended up signing with Chicago, which had a new head coach, which if you have a new head coach, you're 3 weeks before everybody else reports to, spring camp. So like everything just happened so dang fast and it's hard to really catch your breath. But yeah, just kind of rolled with it and, made the best out of it.
And there's just something about that Super Bowl stage where one moment can change a person's life to one extreme or the other. Where, I mean, Jackie Smith, old St. Louis Cardinals tight end. We've talked about it for Blood and Guts. Where I mean, he drops that touchdown in a Super Bowl when he's with the Cowboys, last game of his career, and it took him decades to kind of mentally get through that, get over that.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy. I'm sure you know Jackie Smith. You hear that name, and there's the iconic images. He's one of the best tight ends in NFL history. He
Yeah.
changed the game itself. Yet people think of that one moment, and there was so much that went into that play that was out of his control. And it just blows my mind how like a split second and one extreme or the other, everything can change. I don't know if
I
you ever
mean,
thought about that. Like, man, if this play goes haywire, it could have gone that route.
yeah. I don't really think about it, honestly. I've thought of like, oh, well, what could Nick and I have joked like, oh, what if he would have dropped it? Or what if I would have thrown a bad throw? Or, what if Corey didn't pitch it perfectly? Yeah. I mean, for sure. I think just the personality that I have, I think regardless of if it went really bad or really good, I wouldn't really think of the negative side of things. I would think
Yeah.
of I mean, winning masks everything, right? So if something really bad would have happened, that wasn't like this deciding play in the game, But if if that would have went bad and we still would have won, no one would have ever really talked about it. But the fact that it went well and we won, it was a double positive.
Want to get to the Chicago time as well, but Nick Foles, what kind of person is Nick Foles? I feel like everybody I've ever talked to about this guy, they just cannot say enough about him as a human being.
Yeah, man, Nick's fun to be around. He's an unbelievable human. He's a great husband, a really, really, really good dad, involved dad. I mean, we were talking the other day, and he's talking about how he's, coaching his sons. One of his kids, I forgot if he was saying soccer or football, but he was just complaining to me about the parents. I'm like, dude, yeah, they're crazy, number one, but like, what the hell are you doing, worrying about or dealing with these parents? But he's like hands-on coaching, which is really cool to see it out in California. But that's him, he's funny as heck, loves to laugh, loves to joke around, and has, unbelievable football talent. But, just a great dude. Great. You would have a lot of fun, hanging out. He's a guy you can hang out and have a beer with, or he's a guy you can hang out and chill and have a conversation with. And he goes out of his way to, have conversations with people, and just a great dude.
I mean, all that stuff had to have mattered to behind the scenes with that group to just gravitate toward him as leader, as a person, and rally for those three playoff games. You could kind of feel it how you guys really believed
Yeah.
in him.
Well, one of my favorite Foles stories is him and I are both Christians, and I remember my first day in Philadelphia. Just I have no clue where the hell I am or what I'm doing, and they give me a locker, and it's in the middle of the locker room, and like a makeshift locker that they bring in for all the undrafted guys, and just I have no clue which way is right and which way is left. It was my first day in the locker room, and I remember him like coming behind me and tapping me on the shoulder, and he says, "Hey, tomorrow morning at 8:30, we're doing the Bible study in the offensive team meeting room, and you're more than welcome to come." And then walks away and starts inviting other people. And I remember the next day I show up at 8:30 and to get ready for the Bible study, and he's the one leading the Bible study. And there's also like other coaches and other people in the front office of the Eagles in that Bible study as well. And I remember like looking. The first thought I had was like looking at him, and I said to myself, if the starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles is leading Bible study, what am I doing with my life? And from then on, like I was changed. He like lit a fire in me, which led to a lot of things in the Philly, greater Philadelphia city area, and all that type of stuff. But that's like my favorite. That embodies Foles, because he led studies. He was always at studies, even if he wasn't leading. He was always there, and he was always inviting people. And he opened his house. He would do a bunch of different things. He was just such a really, really good dude and an unbelievable, like model specifically as like a rookie in the league to kind of follow.
Very cool. And man, so you're a free agent. You're trying to figure out where to go. I think that at one point Andy Reid called you and he's like, "Hey, we got this quarterback you might want
Yeah,
to play with, Patrick Mahomes." So that's a possibility. And but you don't know what Patrick Mahomes is at that
I had
point.
no clue. I mean, I watched him at Texas Tech, you know what I mean? But other than that, I had no clue. It's funny, man, because that was a really fast time in my life, the free agency side. Like I said, the season's over. Yeah, there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes, legally, illegally, like whatever. And so you're always by your phone, right? Because I have a couple weeks to figure out what is best for my family and I and what we're going to do next. And so I think I was in my backyard. I'm a big like cooker, smoker, barbecue type of guy. So I was in my backyard doing something, and my agent calls and he's like, "Hey, get ready. You're gonna get a couple calls here in a couple minutes." I'm like, "All right, cool." And so I get a phone call and I go sit down on the couch that we have outside, and it's a FaceTime from I forgot what area code, but it wasn't an area code I recognized, and so I answer it because at that time I never really answer a phone if I don't know the number, but at the time I had to answer it just the season I was in, and the FaceTime, so I answer it, and it's Andy Reid, big old face, like the phone's like close as hell to his face. I'm like, "Oh, coach, what's going on, man?" And I had never met him before. And yeah, we just had a conversation. It was a great conversation. He was the only guy that FaceTimed me, only head coach that FaceTime me. But yeah, he was talking about this guy. They had just gotten rid of Alex Smith, and he's like, "This guy is going to be the face of the league. He's comparable to Brett Favre." And I'm thinking to myself, like, bro, this guy hasn't played I mean, I'm sure he's great, right? Like, I'm not trying to dog the guy, but like, I'm sure he's good, but he's never played a snap in the NFL. How are you going to sit here and tell me this kid is going to be better than Brett Favre? He's never played. You know what I mean? Like, that's just a that's just a really high bar, in my opinion, to say of somebody if they've never played a snap, in the NFL. And so I understand, like, if he's played 3 or 4 years and all the pieces are together,
Yeah.
and this is his year, third or fourth year in the league, whatever. He's matured, but nah, man, it was like this guy has never played. He's going to be Brett Favre, the face of the NFL. Yeah, I just had a really hard time believing that. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie. Like, just being blunt, like I called my agent after. I'm like, "Dude, he thinks this guy is gonna be so good," and my agent's like, "Yeah, man. Like, he's raving about. He said this, and he truly believes. He's not just like blowing smoke." And yeah, so I mean, I got a bunch of calls, and I was fortunate enough, that a bunch of calls, and kind of got to pick where we wanted to go, and we felt like Chicago was the best place to go for us.
I mean, at that point, he was just a rookie the year before. I think he played that game
Yeah,
against Denver at the end. But yeah, nobody has a clue. And they traded Alex Smith
I
Super Bowl
know,
week, like
I
a
know.
few days before your game against the Patriots. So
Yeah,
who is this guy from Texas Tech? Nobody knows. But Andy Reid, I just said so much about his feel for the position. I mean, he
yeah.
knew then that this guy was going to take over the league. That's wild.
Yeah, no, it was crazy, and it was really hard for me to believe it. And I should have known to never doubt, him and his knowledge of the game. But it was just really hard. I was making a pretty serious decision. Where was I going to go for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years? So yeah, it was just I couldn't believe it. And now looking back, obviously that would have been an unbelievable
Yeah.
opportunity.
Were the numbers comparable? I think it was 4 years, 32 mil with Chicago. I mean, if it's similar,
I don't think it was for Kansas City because they had Travis
yeah.
and they wanted to be their second guy, but there
Oh, that's
were
true.
3 or 4 other very, very comparable opportunities elsewhere that we were considering as well. But yeah,
Chicago was great. I mean, really, you're there. I've talked to players and coaches, personnel about that team. I mean, you were a go-to guy in that offense. 54
yeah,
catches, 569 yards, 6 touchdowns, a Pro Bowl alternate. That was the same Bears team that smashed the Rams during the regular season. So,
hmm
a field goal goes in. You win in the divisional round. You're in the conference championship game. You could be back in a Super Bowl.
yeah,
Man, that team, that Bears team, really could have gone the distance, could have won it. And was it the day before that wild card game against Philly? You had a groin injury. Is that right?
yeah. 2 days before,
2 days before. Oh
Yeah.
my God. I can't imagine what's going through your mind when this pain, it did just kind of come out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was weird. Like we didn't really practice all week for the most part, and then on Friday we were practicing, and um, I had some crazy pain like in my in the groin, and yeah, it was just weird. The whole situation was super weird. I woke up the next day like in agonizing pain. The next morning, I really couldn't sleep much, and I was like in the facility at like 4:45, 5 o'clock in the morning, just like in crazy pain. But yeah, it just led me on like a really wild goose egg hunt search to try to figure out what was going on, and a core surgery and then a hip surgery later. We finally figured out what the issue was.
So you were like practicing that Friday when you usually don't, just maybe the extra
Well,
exertion did.
we didn't practice all week. Like it was like kind of
Oh,
walkthrough ish type of things, and because you're in the playoffs, right? So you want to limit as much interaction or contact that you have so that you're not getting hurt. And so yeah, it was just a Friday before the game, and just a really weird and unique situation.
how good was that? Do you I imagine as a competitor, you're probably thinking in your head, I'm on the field, I'm making plays. Maybe we're back in the Super Bowl. Maybe we're back on that stage.
We definitely were good enough. We're talented enough for that. Our defense was out of this world. Like I was saying about the Eagles this year, that defensive line and linebacker core we had in shoot even DBs and corner. That whole defense in general. Vic Fangio was actually the defensive coordinator
Yeah.
there for us in Chicago, and they did very similar to what the Eagles did this year. They didn't blitz much because they didn't need to. They could get home a lot of times one on one, and so they were always a threat. They always kept us in the game, and Mitch was playing at a high level that year, and so we definitely had all the talent, all the tools to go very far for sure.
And so it took a while to kind of figure out what was going on with, you hear that a lot, like groin, core muscle, hip. Like it can be hard for doctors to figure out what in the hell's going on,
Well,
that area of the body.
the truth behind it is the core muscle is a lot faster recovery. And so like a lot of people will do the core muscle stuff first to see if it is any better. And then once you don't get any better, then they do the hip, but the hip's such a long recovery that they
Mhm.
don't want to just jump to that. You know what I mean? And so you have to kind of go through this, parade of things and treatments and that type of stuff to figure out what actually is going on. And then, eventually you end up doing the hip and everything gets a lot better after that.
It was a strange off season too. I mean, there's somebody there that said how, I think that was when Childress came in the off season,
Yeah,
and there's kind of a shift where coaches believe in, look, Mitchell Trubisky is not Patrick Mahomes, obviously, but there was a formula that worked the year before. There was some belief, and then it seemed like coaches maybe stopped believing. And camp was rough. You get into the season. There's the loss against Green Bay, which I don't think you played. I mean, the groin was kind of lingering then for you, and,
I don't
and
remember honestly.
but it went downhill fast, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Which is unfortunate. But I don't know. You played a little longer, right? You get to Indy. You're around
yep.
Reich and
hmm
Sirianni is there.
Yeah, so I was done after Chicago. Like I said, I didn't want to be a lifer, so I was ready to get out. And
Yeah.
Frank called me. Frank was the offensive coordinator in Philly when we won, and had an unbelievable relationship with him. And so he called me, like same thing. I think I was out back in my backyard, and my agent's like, "Hey, you're gonna get a couple more calls." Da da da. And so I probably had 5 or 6 teams call and had some really good conversations, but I was pretty sure I'm done. Like I'm not going to go back out. Not going to go out and play again. I had a lot of guaranteed money from Chicago, so no matter what team I signed with, they would sign me for minimum because was getting the guaranteed money from Chicago. So it wasn't like a financial thing. Like I wasn't going to make any more money. Da da da. And so I was going to make the same amount of money if I was sitting here in my house, or I was going to go play. And so I was done, like I said. And Frank called me, and we had a really good conversation. They had just lost Eric Ebron to the Steelers, I believe. And he was like, Trey, I'm telling you, I wouldn't call you if I didn't need you. Like, da da da, we're going to take care of you. Um, and just out of the respect I have for him and the conversation that I was having, I was like, man, I really like this guy. And my wife and I prayed over it, talked about it. Cause I mean, it doesn't just mean that I'm going to go play ball again. That means like we have to relocate, like the family
Yeah.
has to get up and go. And my family would always come with me everywhere I went. And we have to find schools and housing. And it's a lot more complicated than like, oh, am I going to go play or am I not going to go play? And so, and a big factor was that Phillip Rivers was there. A guy that has played forever and knows defenses and offenses like the back of his hand. And so, there's a lot of things that went into it. But yeah, I ended up going and signing there, and had a lot of fun in Indy. Indy, it stinks during COVID. I can tell you that. Like, it's not a city you want to live in the middle of the COVID, but we had a great time. The organization is great. Some of those people in the facility are some of the best people I've been around, and was really glad I ended up doing that.
Yeah, I think you guys were 11-5. Was that the year you played the Bills in the
Yeah,
playoffs?
we were
This was a
really
tight
good, man.
game.
We were really good. Like same similar thing. Like, our defense was awesome. We had Kenny Moore. A D pass rush was out of this world. We had guys that get after the quarterback. And on offense, I had Phillip. It was so much fun playing with him. He's such a different guy. Being that old and with that much knowledge, and he always got us in the right play. It was so crazy. Like, and the way he conducted the offense was so unique. And I'm really glad I got to experience that. We had a great relationship, and but yeah, it was just really special. It was cool being with Sirianni and one of my favorite coaches of all time, Jason Michael. He's the tight end coach in Philly now. Sirianni brought him with him when he went to Philly. But yeah, just it's cool to be around those guys and meet those guys, and there was a lot of good that came out of that situation.
Like I told you before we dinged record, we've got baby number 3 on the way in June. I'm
Yeah,
kind of bracing for impact, with that zone defense. How in the hell does Philip Rivers pull it off? I mean, you had to have seen it up close to some degree. How many kids does
yeah.
he have? 9, 10?
I don't know, bro, but it was really cool seeing like his kids around during the off season,
Yeah.
and like he would bring them out and they would shag balls, and they would snap it to him, and they would throw to us every once in a while, and it was just cool for him to bring them around, and he wasn't like separate from them. They were definitely in his life day to day, and that was really inspiring and pretty cool for me to see.
And what was Sirianni like up close? Because we hear and we
He's a
see, that
fireball. I
the
mean,
energy,
yeah,
right?
yeah. What you see is what you get, man. With him, really bright, football minded, like really, really bright. But he's a firecracker, man. He'll fire you up, and he'll love on you, at the same exact time. I remember one of my first days there, during spring practice. I think everybody had left, or we might have had the day off, and we were just watching film, and everybody left, and I was doing some treatment stuff, and he walks through the training room, and he was like, "Hey, you want to go shoot some hoops?" I'm like, "Sure." And so we go into the team meeting room, and they had a basketball hoop, and we were in there with me and 3 or 4 other coaches just shooting, playing pig, and screwing around. But that's him. That embodies him. 100% because he's a big joker, loves jokes. Like, he's joking nonstop. One of the biggest jokers I've been around. But then on the other side, like, you do something wrong, or give him some attitude, he'll fire you up really, really quick.
I'd imagine that's all guys want, some authenticity, being real.
For sure. For sure.
Like, you,
For
you
sure.
can you can smell fake a mile away.
You can appreciate it, and you can have like a real conversation with them, and it's not going to hurt his feelings. He like genuinely wants to know like what you think and what you're feeling, and what he doesn't just ask you, like, hey, what's going on, and then keep on moving to the next person. Like, he wants to like eye contact and have a conversation and kind of get to know
Yeah.
you and understand you a little bit more. And I think that's one of the reasons why he's flourished. I, Anybody, your first head coaching gig in Philadelphia, your first head coaching gig in general is tough, but to have it in the city of Philadelphia is, whew, man, that's a tough gig. You know what I mean? But he was built for it, and you've seen his success, and so happy for him and his whole entire family. He deserves it. I mean, the amount of time he puts in. I remember last year I went to go watch training camp in Philly, and they had just come back from one of their preseason games. And I'm walking through the facility. I'm hanging with Jason Michael, and he's like, "You want to go say what's up to Nick real quick?" I'm like, "Yeah." And so we walk in and we knock on his office door. He doesn't answer. I knock on it again. Jason like opens it to peek his head in there, and he's passed out on the couch sleeping because he was watching film all night
Wow.
and just knocked out, tired. Like, his commitment to the team, and he like wakes up. He's like, "Sorry, man, I just got done watching film on the game we just played last night, and I got a couple hours until our coaches meeting." But he like woke up and I sat there for 30 minutes and had a great conversation. I was asking about the family and the kids, and he likes to talk about fishing. I used to fish a lot, down here. So yeah, he's just a genuine dude, and a great guy.
Because how easily we forget. I mean, a year ago, the city wanted to banish him to the streets with rickety cricket. Like
Yeah.
they wanted him gone. Both coordinators are fired. I was surprised, given the energy around the situation from afar. I was surprised he kept his job. with how much it seemed the constituents wanted him out. And when he's going through that, knowing him like you know him, like you just said, he's built for it. Is that what you're thinking? Like he'll get through this, but were you maybe a little worried, like, oh man, is this guy done?
Yeah, you just never really know, through the media. You never really know what's true and what's not true. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors, especially in the Philadelphia media. They're not known for being the most honest people in the entire world. So they're very opinionated. And just because you feel like this should happen doesn't mean it's going to happen. I don't know, how close he was to, being fired or anything like that, but I knew with Vic, him hiring Vic and
Yeah.
just me knowing Vic and how unbelievable a defensive mind that he is. Nick just has the personality to be able to weather that stuff. He's not gonna change. He's not gonna be sad or anything like that. He's going to put his foot on the gas and do the best he can for that organization and that team. And I knew he had the right people behind him, and he leaned on those guys. He still does lean on those guys a lot. He has a lot of he lets them give a lot of input. Honestly, like he is very open minded. From that standpoint. And so you just never really know what's truly happening. There's a lot of things, obviously playing 7 years and playing in college, you hear this, on TV, but what really is going on is something completely different. And so, yeah, I didn't never really was worried about it. I knew he was going to do really well, especially, how well he did his first year there in Philly. Not much has changed, personnel wise. They've just gotten better. And so, yeah, just really happy for him and the whole organization.
Love it. Trey Burton. I mean, we hear that name. We're gonna think of that play in Minneapolis, but how do you want to be remembered? How does Trey Burton want to be remembered when it's all said and done?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really put too much thought behind it. I could care less. How people, as long as it's positive, I could care less. All I really care about is how what my kids think, what my wife thinks. The people that are close to me thinks. I could care less about everybody else, honestly. But hopefully, it's positive.
Well, hey, thanks so much for hanging out, Trey. This was awesome. Got to let you get back to chasing kids around, coaching,
Yeah, man,
everything
you
down there in
got it.
Tampa.
You got it,
Appreciate you,
brother.
man.
Thanks for having me. Talk to you soon.
You got it.